Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush show here on New Revolutionary Radio. This is a show where we seek not only to inform, but to inspire you to action. We're going to talk about politics and current events on our program, but we're going to do it from an angle of human rights, civil liberties, and activism. It's our goal to enable an informed citizenry, and we're going to do it by emphasizing critical thinking, news source verification, and actual science versus nonsensical quackery. But most important of all, we hope to inspire you, our listeners, to take action in your community. While it is our job to deliver the clear, verified truth, our talking to you is only a small part of our goals. The real power belongs to you, and it is up to you to decide where your strength lies when facing the real challenges ahead. But know that when you decide to stand up and make a difference, we will stand beside you.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm GreggHoush. Welcome to the first recording of the GreggHoush Show, where I'm sure we were going to make a million mistakes. Bear with us, as this is our first time using this wonderful new studio. I am here in studio with my new co-host, Casey McLaughlin, and our guest, Matt Sienkiewicz. Okay, so our guest today is Professor Matt Sienkiewicz, whose name I am butchering, but
you got it right.
At his behest.
It's perfect.
He is assistant professor of communication and international studies at Boston College. And I met Matt through an interesting email I received asking me to come to class one day and talk to his students at his online communication and global society class.
Yeah, I was. This was my first course dealing with sort of broad issues that included technology online, not just sort of theory and most of what I teach about is television and film. Mostly we look at sort of texts, and it's easier to sort of address what's on the screen. And then I realized, oh no, with the internet, like some of the stuff that's on there, I don't know what's behind there. Right, like it's really complicated stuff, and I wanted to talk about the dark web. I wanted to talk about the work that Anonymous does. I want to talk about hacking, and it was a place where I just needed an expert from the outside world. So I think I might have just like Googled a anonymous spokesperson or something like this. You popped up, and you happened to be in Boston, so I wrote you an email.
There we have it. Matt's going to be with us the entire episode here, chiming in where necessary. So there we go.
Thanks for having me, Gregg.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about current events, cybersecurity, knowing your rights, and get into a little bit of a discussion with our guest about all of these topics. We're going to open up here with Casey going over current events.
Hello. So we have had a busy week this week, as we have for the last few weeks since, give or take, January 20th.
What happened then?
I don't know. That's just the pivot point I have in my head.
That's weird. All
of
right.
when I remember having to read a lot of Associated
It's
Press.
funny. You had to start reading, but that's when
I did.
when other people.
2017 has been the year that I've done a lot of reading.
Oh, so what's more recent?
This week, one of the big news stories was the Day Without Immigrants. Which was nationwide. A lot of immigrant workers didn't show up to their jobs. Even in Massachusetts, places closed down that were run by immigrants. And simultaneously, we have seen a lot of ICE raids, which, have been more under the Trump administration, more so directed at non-criminals than they have in the past. I believe there's been raids in at least 6 states. I want to say, yeah, so we have here Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, North Carolina, South Carolina. And one of the big stories that came out of that was there was a transgender woman who was seeking protection at a courthouse in El Paso, Texas, from her abuser. She was a victim of domestic violence, and she, after seeking protection, left the courtroom and was detained there by ICE agents and has been arrested. So that has been a big talking point this week, especially in terms of, the domestic violence prevention community. I mean, that's a tough way to be when, you can't, any threat of any crime potentially is going to keep you from going and reporting and seeking help. It's shown the law is not going to be on your side if that's your position.
Right. It's one of those things that really points to the real downsides, the real dangers of these things, right? It's always look. This is a case in which I think probably us in this room, we don't like the intended consequences of this, but the unintended consequences might be even worse. They force people into positions where they either, for example, they can't come forward if they're being abused, or that they can be easily blackmailed, right? You're enabling people to get put into positions where rights will be, not just judged upon, but they can potentially be in real trouble. And
Yeah, especially when so much, I mean, domestic violence, even if it's physical, is also marked by severe emotional, psychological, oftentimes financial abuse as well. And, something like this is certainly giving that much more power into the hands of the abusers.
It's taking away any hope of a way out for a relatively large group of people. I don't see any way out of this that's positive. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any positive happening in terms of ICE and Trump. This administration's, actions, they have all these wonderful justifications, but looking at how this actually goes and what we've seen so far, even in just a few weeks, has been, quite horrendous. I don't think, we survived 4 years of this 3 weeks repeating every 3 weeks.
It's not funny, but it's true. And it's cliche, and you feel like there's nothing so hard to say something new about this. But in a case like this, is a nice example of the insistence of simple narratives on the part of the administration, and particularly on the part of people who vocally support the administration. So, Casey, you said that these are raids on non-criminals, right? And of course, they would speak
certainly also raids on criminals, but more so focused on non-criminals.
You're calling them non-criminals, and I'm calling them non-criminals, and I suspect Gregg would call them non-criminals. But they are criminals, at least in the look. Technically speaking, you're talking people who have done something illegal,
correct?
Right? And so, but this is a narrative difference, right? You introduced it as non-criminals, and then we went down a path saying like, oh my lord, you are taking non-criminals and you are putting them in positions where they can't speak up for themselves and they're abused, where they can be blackmailed and so on, right? But the narrative that you get from this administration, the supporters, is that no, these are criminals, right? You start with the idea they're criminals, and then it justifies everything, right? And this kind of binary thinking, right? That's the root of many problems in society, is a binary worldview. Criminals, non-criminals, right? These are people who are in a position where technically they've entered the country illegally, but the broader historical context really makes that binary untenable.
Of course. I mean, you can look at that specific binary and then look at the rising numbers every year of people in our jail system and say they are definitely correlated.
Yeah.
The idea that every crime deserves, specific levels of punishment, which is what he's preaching, that, there's a minimum of we have to do this. And, we have hundreds of years of not doing specifically what he's trying to do right now.
We have the better parts of our judicial system are ones that understand gray areas, and that actually also understand that sometimes you don't prosecute people for certain crimes, and this draconian sort of category way of thinking, right? I mean, this is, when people say that he is dumb, are we saying his name on the show or no?
Of course.
Okay, so when we're President Trump, that hurts, right? Okay.
I mean, I say Mr. Trump,
Mr. Well, you like the New York Times?
Yeah.
So when we say President Trump is dumb, right? Like that's not helpful, right? But what can be helpful is to sort of specify as to why. One of the ways in which he is dumb is that he sees the world like a child, right? Insofar as children tend to categorize. They tend to say there are these things and these things and these things. Right, and they do not see that it's a little more complicated than that. That sometimes when you do that, you put things in bad places, right? And that is what, if we have to live with this for 4 years, I mean that's the like, it's like listening to my 4-year-old niece, right? It's that level of sophistication when it comes to divvying up the world.
Well, it gets worse than that though, and maybe soon we'll see just how much worse. He's been talking about the possibility, internally, but everything is leaking at this point, about using the National Guard to possibly come down on the immigrants. And,
yeah, that's been another big part of the immigration-based
and
news
what we've run
week.
into is members of the National Guard coming out vocally saying, I would not do that.
Oh yeah, I would think so. Now I've also heard, they denied this, and I've heard speculation that in fact these are, and this is like a really complicated thing to get through your head, right? False leaks in order to send the media down a path. But there's no such thing as a false leak, because that means it was actually said, right? So is this a an accurate reflection of a horrific potential policy, or is it a more complicated reflection of a even more horrific, perhaps, strategy by which they're going to basically misinform the population in order to?
I think that gives them too much credit.
You think so?
I mean,
Maybe.
Where I look at it is, we've watched Trump for weeks now, and it's almost like a child who doesn't have object permanence yet. Like literally, like he forgets things the second he's not looking at them, and forgets what someone told him an hour ago because someone 5 minutes ago told him something different. So he'll talk to his advisors and he'll hear all about how this is what I'm doing and this is what, and then he'll say something and it'll leak out. The press will start talking about it. 2 hours later, he'll be in front of a crowd and he'll say the exact opposite. And that's because he was just on the phone with one of his, friends from Mar-a-Lago who told him something completely different, and now he's changed his mind.
And all he has to say at the end of it is, well, this is what I was told, and really not going to offer any
that was really, his
explanation
landslide victory, right? This is particular.
Greatest electoral
It
college
could easily
victory.
be, one of those where he did say this, but it was, again, just Trump speaking out loud when he should have just been thinking it and then changing his mind before he said it.
Yes, no.
So, and that's why they would maybe call it a fake leak at this point, because it wasn't a plan he was going to actually do. Right. But, we don't know.
Well, that's part of the problem, right? Is that one, there's a complete lack of confidence that anything would be intentional, right? And two, he is just getting up there and saying Googleably false things, right? And he doesn't seem to know what question he's being asked.
Yeah, it's unlike other politicians where they dodge the questions very deftly. Like
which means they knew the
question. See them dodge the question, and you're like just amazed at the skill that they've learned to do that. With him, it's just like, no, I don't think he understood what he was asked.
He has a lot of Kellyanne Conway in him, but all of it seems to be very unintentional. Like he can kind of accidentally do a good amount of what she can do.
Well, right, but how you know that it's so Kellyanne Conway, at the very least, she is ducking questions that would get her in trouble were she to answer them accurately. There was a million things to talk about in that press conference. I mean, there was just too much.
Course.
But my favorite moment, partly sort of personal interest, partly just because of how incredibly inept it was his answer to the question about anti-Semitism, in which he gets a question from somebody who starts it saying, I know you're not an anti-Semite. I don't think you are. There's no reason to believe you are. We could debate that or not. But the question, that's what it says. And he says, what are you going to do about the fact that there is anti-Semitism in the world? And he responds by saying he's not an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
Right. But he has pivoted off of a question that started with a compliment to him. Right? He could have easily said, well, being the great supporter of the Jewish people I'm going to do this. But instead, he just said, I'm not an anti. It's Kellyanne Conway at least is ducking questions that are meant to hurt her, right? Because she's pretty vulnerable to those. He is ducking questions because he literally can't hear a question.
He makes it very hard to believe that he really is the one in charge at the end of the day calling these shots.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you literally can't hear a basic question and formulate a response that is parallel to it, it's hard to understand how you're going to be executing raids in Yemen. Right, that seems really far-fetched.
Yes.
This is good. We can transition a little into the press conference disaster of this week. There were multiple, even. I'm not even sure it was just one. I mean, there was the electoral college.
How many?
Comment.
There was many disasters in the one.
Yeah. Asking the black reporter to set up a meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus, asking her if she was friends with them.
With that one specifically, I have to admit that I wasn't looking at the screen the first time that was played for me, so I wasn't told anything about it. And I just heard him asking a random reporter if, And so my first thought was, well, that's not the reporter's job. You have people that can do that. So I wasn't seeing the race angle because I wasn't looking at the screen. And then someone said, look, and I looked over the screen, and that's when it hit me like, oh, this is 10 times worse than I thought it was. It was already so bad.
Well, right.
How could it be worse? And then I look at the screen, and it's actually worse.
Well, no, and it's exactly what I was talking about a moment ago. And this is a person who sees the world in these very limited, thin, stark categories. So much so that, yeah, sure, black people must be friends with black people. Right. That's, and then there's the secondary question of what an unprofessional thing to do, even if it is the case. Right. Like that's
what she does say. She's
right.
like, well, I do know some of them, but I'm a reporter.
Well,
this is not, this is no longer my realm of control.
These are
assistants.
Well, does everybody in that room knows people in the Congressional Black Caucus? They're Washington reporters. Doesn't the fact that she's the black woman does not, it's infuriating. But
Can you set up that meeting?
Again, with dodging I think the question was,
know people in the
are
Congressional
you
Black
going to have
Caucus,
a
like,
meeting with these people?
Right. There was no need
And
to
it's just the deflecting of responsibility. Yeah, well, you set it up. Someone set it up. I'll certainly talk to them.
No, right. The answer, well, right. You simply, to answer that question properly, you just say, oh, of course. I'm going to meet with all members of Congress who have relevant issues to discuss with me. Period. Right.
The amount of resources he has too that he would feel the need to even ask a reporter to do something like that.
So
for
does
them?
he think he's being funny?
No, I think he honestly is just used to a life where whoever's standing closest to him is there to do his bidding. And so whoever he's currently talking to, when something strikes him as, I need this, he's going to tell that person to give it to him. And so he's just not used to conversations in which he isn't, in that position. And so in this one, he's talking to someone, she brings up a point, and he says, oh, well, then make it happen. Because he's just so used to talking to people in that way.
The question I have about this situation is in this where, he can't fathom the resources that he would have to be able to set this meeting up on his own. He can't fathom how bad it would look for him to ask any reporter, let alone an African-American reporter, if they're friends with the Congressional Black Caucus, can they set up the meeting? So if we can't even get, to the point of that he can't understand these basic concepts, is this even, how do we even talk about this also with the racism embedded here too, because if he truly, it doesn't enter him.
We're not operating on a high enough level to worry about.
This is the issue I have with so much of this new administration is I don't even know if it's productive to get into the, the deeper, more embedded.
So you're saying basically
issues with why he does so many of the things that he does because there's such
because we credit them too much. Is that the idea?
The people who would understand what you have to say about these issues don't care. And him, I really, he wouldn't do stuff like that. I mean, look at when he was talking with Netanyahu. He refers to him twice on stage in front of the press, live to the world as Bibi. Right. He doesn't call him by any of his official titles, anything that he could use that would be presidential of him to say. Right. He literally just calls him Bibi. Like that's okay. That's not okay. At that level, in those types of meetings, that is not how that works.
No, it's true. But if you're going to combine it with the nonsense content, I'd actually rather have him admit that he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Admit that, at least it's better to give the impression this is not coming in an official context because it is so slovenly, intellectually, talking about Israel. I mean,
his answer was, really whatever they want.
Well, this is great.
In the end, it was really whatever you want.
As though that there is something that there's two problems with this, right? The slightly more complicated one is that there's no real vase, right? There's no Israel and Palestine. There are competing groups within each that are at neck and neck, right? They're really at each other's necks, right? But then there's the idea, if there was something everybody liked, then we would have solved the problem a long time ago, right?
One state, two state is I mean, it's too simplified. Again, that comes down to one of those binaries that's kind of this false dichotomy where that doesn't really exist, because if you go one state and you truly one state it and those borders between the two groups of people go away, there will be more Arabs, more Palestinians, and a greater percentage of the population non-Jewish in Israel if you do that.
Soon enough.
And I don't think the Israelis, especially the Jewish Israelis, will go for that. That's not a thing that they want, and they've kind of made that clear.
Oh, I think they made that clear by founding the state of Israel.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
The function of the state.
The one state option doesn't seem to actually be an option. But
I tend to agree with you. Now, I tend to agree with you. So that's easy enough for me to say yes. And it's definitely a situation where, a two-state solution is the worst solution except for every other solution. Conceivable solution. That said, there are smart people who, advocate for looking at it through a one-state lens. I disagree with them, but there are smart people on all sides of the issue who do advocate for that. It is possible to articulate that. Right. What you can't do is treat them as though they're not completely fundamentally existentially different. Right. That's the problem. The problem is him saying, oh, it could be one state, could be two state. You're talking about two different universes. Yeah. You're talking about, do we want to live in this one universe or this other one, which is in a key way totally opposite? American interests are going to be flipped upside down in those. Right. The security status of the Middle East is going to be flipped. Let's say we don't know which one's better. You still have to acknowledge and stress the fact that this is a major difference, not one of the light preference of whoever happens to be in charge at the moment. It's astounding.
Right. Again, but it also just shows his ignorance on the subject and how much he actually cares. The simple fact that he said, oh, one state, two state, whatever you want. I mean, obviously shows a lot of real personal buy-in here. He
Right.
really put a lot of thought into that answer.
Well, and he also this week said, urged Netanyahu to hold back a little bit on the settlements.
settlements.
Right, as though that is as though it's just it's
Well, he's also telling them to do whatever it is they want.
oh right as
Whoever this they is.
oh right
Yeah,
right.
of course, the wonderful they. But I mean, I want to hear what happens if someone actually brings John Kerry's interesting kind of off the record solution to him. I don't know if you ever heard one of Kerry's solutions was to take an area of eastern Syria that now is kind of in northwestern Iraq and south eastern Turkey there, that kind of like little region, and carve out a little circle there and give half of it to the Kurds and give half of it to the Palestinians and then say we're done here.
Well, that's stupid.
That was well, you're right, and I don't think that's actually a workable solution
that's
at all.
stupid.
But Kerry was very clear in how he laid it out, how it would work, how we migrate the people, and he put that out there. So what I'm just hoping is that like we're just going to mention it here, but no one tell Trump about that, because I think that he'll come out the next day and say, "Hey, I've got this idea."
I could do one state. I could do two states. I could do we could do a colony on Mars.
Yeah.
Right. We could build a bunker on the moon. Right.
Yeah, of course.
Anything's possible. And it's so on the one hand he calls him BB, so what? On the other hand, it is entirely indicative of not having thought through it. Right? He didn't want to figure out how to pronounce Netanyahu. Right? Do you say Benjamin or Binyamin? Let's not deal with that. Right? We'll just call him BB. And also, I mean, talk about sending a message to Abbas and the other Palestinian leaders, Erekat, right? That you're going to call this guy by his cute little nickname in the White House, right?
Then Netanyahu made it very clear. Oh yeah, I've known this guy and I've known Kushner for like ever, and we're just close family friends. And he starts joking about like their childhood, know. And, I mean, that sends a very strong message that I'm pretty positive Trump did not know he was sending. It was not intentionally sent.
Well, for one, he does not seem to have an understanding of the long-standing reality that certainly the Palestinians, most of the Arab world, frankly, most of the world, has not trusted for a long time us being the United States, to be an honest broker in this situation. Right? He doesn't know that we already are on strike 2.9.
Yes.
Right? When it comes to that, right? And so these things are well put. I mean, it's a strikeout, right? You're out. You're on the bench with these things, but he just no knowledge of that. I mean, what I hear and read from some interesting people is just maybe this world is in this situation is at such a stalemate that just the total random like chaos of it could in some way break a logjam. Personally, I think that's silly. Putting a madman in charge is not generally a solution to anything. But that's the only silver lining you could find, is that it's not as though we've had any progress for the past 50 years. So like,
it was explained to me as outside of the box thinking might play here.
Yeah, the word thinking is a big lie there.
Yeah, that's
though,
the
right?
problem.
Like that's
who knows? Maybe with Netanyahu being brought up on charges by
that's the best,
Israeli police for corruption, maybe that changes something.
Yeah, no, and there's a story one can tell in which a predictive story in which the Israeli politics swings back towards the center, and it forces a government that includes a lot of people who are disgusted with Trump, and that becomes that then he has to actually deal more. He can't just hang out with his buddies, right? That he'll have to treat Israelis and Palestinians with a slightly more even-handed perspective if that Israeli government can swing to the point where some people in power are willing to stand up and call Trump for what he is.
Well, I mean, that all depends on how much money his businesses are currently making in Israel, doesn't it?
Oh, I'm sure they're.
I mean, if we really want to get there,
yeah. I mean, in that I don't know if you're going to get to the China trademark stuff, all these things, just these like crazy, obvious, complete conflicts of interest, just everywhere.
So let's see if we can cool down from Trump himself and talk more about the Harvard turning down National Security Advisor this week after Flynn was forced to resign after, what was it, accidentally briefing Vice President on
Lying
that
something.
was nice of you,
really
accidentally.
Inadvertently briefed the Vice President-elect and others with incomplete information regarding my phone calls with the Russian ambassador.
Okay.
So he resigns. Harvard is supposedly the nominee to take over. He declines for personal reasons. He has recently retired. He wants to spend time with his family, whatever it is.
Yeah, all kinds of excuses.
And now we have
But there are
Kellogg,
definitely
I believe,
quotes
yeah.
from people who claim to be personal friends of Harwood stating very clearly that he had no trust in this administration. He did not feel for a minute that anything he actually wanted to get done would get done, and that his final strike was that the people he was recommending he bring along with him as a team were all struck down because they weren't Trump yes men.
Seems obvious, right? Although it's weird, right? We talk about Trump yes men. You assume that there's the group which we consider Trump yes men, and then there's the group in which we consider Trump being a yes man to them, right?
And,
yeah, I mean, which is it's not a hierarchy. Our vision is not one of a hierarchy, right? It's one of a weird center with people orbiting
Kind of
around it.
Yeah, spiraling echo chamber.
Yeah,
depending
very-
on how you kind of look at the structure of what's sitting there in our White House, there's a fair amount of people that think Bannon has a kind of stranglehold over what's really going on in the end, in a very Dick Cheney kind of way, Karl Rove kind of way.
Well,
Bannon
trying
is
to be both, though,
yeah,
right?
he's
That's
trying to
the
be
real
both of
key.
them.
Yeah.
But that puts us in the interesting situation of the United States of America currently being run by someone who used to be a World of Warcraft gold farmer. He was CEO of a gold farming company, and now he is running America. Is this where we have descended to? Like that's worse to me than a reality TV star being president.
Well, reality TV star, this particular one is look at the trajectory of American presidencies or American major politicians. No surprise there.
No, not at all.
No, the sliminess out of which Bannon emerged is a different story, right? So Trump going through, like these obvious realms of corruption and sort of awful places, but they're sort of the standard. They're the heart of the American economy ones, right? Bannon has been slithering through all sorts of just goop, right? Like just the ugliest stuff. Gold farmers. This means that he would pay people to click and click and click in order to.
He was farming gold in World of Warcraft to resell.
He wasn't farming it.
Well,
he was farming out the farming.
Yeah.
He was giving people
the
carpal
stories
tunnel.
are generally inconsistent on exactly who, but it was pretty clearly foreigners, mostly Asian descent, doing this work.
Which is ironic given his
in,
attitude towards Asians working in Silicon Valley, right? Or maybe
Yes.
not ironic, maybe exactly telling.
Yes.
So this guy's got a piece of Seinfeld. He's a gold farmer. He ran this lie website. He might be the most interesting man in the world.
For certain values of interesting.
Well. If you just use absolute value, right?
Yeah.
No positive, just distance from zero.
Yeah,
right,
interesting not being
you
a
might be right
positive
about that.
indicator.
Surprised Dos Equis has not approached him yet about that. That would be an
yes,
interesting
yes.
campaign tactic on there.
Yeah, the triple
their part.
So Harwood, of course, they nominated another person to replace.
We have General Joseph Keith Kellogg. Retired Lieutenant General Joseph Keith Kellogg is now the acting National Security Advisor. For the time being, we don't know, but
Any
at the
thoughts on him?
moment,
It's just anybody would take the job. I am
Yeah,
immediately
I go
suspicious of.
instantly to the to that spot. I mean, if you're willing to work in this administration, there's probably a lot wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly clear that you're not interested in doing anything interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like you are going to be going along for the ride.
which was there was the Uber CEO, took some position in Trump's cabinet or somewhere in the
Yeah, he stepped out,
administration,
yeah.
ended up stepping down. But his
Under pressure. Yeah.
whole kind of MO was I'm gonna fix it from the inside. I'll
Yeah,
be the
no,
voice of
that's-
reason and all that, and quickly saw that wasn't gonna
going
fly.
to happen.
No.
Elon Musk is still there, though. He's still holding on to his position.
What is his position?
Well, they've got like a council of advisors, is what it seems like. That's where the Uber CEO was. Elon's there too, advising. I think he's more there because of how deeply integrated with the U.S. government he sort of has to be for things like SpaceX.
Yeah.
They just launched from Kennedy. That's government property.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
So I think that's probably the only reason he's actually staying on board there, is to make sure he keeps access to all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. All right. I mean,
So other than Elon, we've got a lot of yes men in the administration as of
And
yet.
at this point, we don't know exactly what Elon's saying while he's there, so he could be yes manning it up too.
well, I mean, he absolutely has a tremendous interest out of his business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about space, it's 100% of this is regulated by either national or supranational governance, right? How could one in that position advise anything? It seems impossible to me.
And how could one in the position of president accept gifts of, trademarks from China?
Yeah, no, that's
and still be considered, to not maybe fall on their side. I don't know, maybe in the Chinese Taipei, or better known and rightfully known as Taiwan, debate.
Well, this makes it fairly okay. Let me ask you this: what both your opinions are? Does this make his? Does this suggest to you the trademark stuff with China, the Chinese Taipeiing of Taiwan, whatever he's doing? His original phone call with Taiwan. Was that some kind of looking for the better deal for himself, or utter incompetence? Literally didn't know who he was talking to, just thought Taiwan was Thailand or something, right?
Right.
Which fits the story better?
I mean, well, the funnier one is that he had no clue who he was talking to. But
it's plausible.
The fact that that's
especially
plausible
this week,
scares
everything
me.
we've covered now.
But I think that he knew who he was talking to. The thing he didn't know was that under current agreements and some spoken, some handshook, some actually written and signed, he wasn't supposed to be doing that.
So he thought
I don't think he knew that he wasn't supposed to until afterward.
Right. So
he just flies off the cuff. He has that man's phone number. He's just going to pick up the phone and call him. He doesn't know that there's protocol here. Now he does.
Right. So he thought it was just
I'll
like
have to agree with Gregg. I can't fathom a universe in which he's so hyper aware of international relations enough that he understands exactly the political message he's sending. If
you watch the Little League World Series, you will know that there's tensions between Taiwan and China, right? It's you don't need to.
Well, let's be honest, he doesn't seem like he was ever very athletic, so that robs him of that opportunity.
How can those small hands? He wasn't catching balls or anything.
Ah, nice, very good. But he's in business. If you're in business in China, dealing with Taiwan is completely different from dealing with
people love to talk
Beijing,
about how good he is at business, but
even if he's bad at it,
only the current running companies are the ones that haven't gone bankrupt. He has bankrupted everything. What is it? 8 total bankruptcies now, I believe is the correct number, somewhere right around there. And
I trust.
How can you ride along on a "I'm good for business" mantra? How can people believe that you're good at this if you continue to file bankruptcy?
Gregg, have you seen how tall and big his gold letters are? Apparently you haven't seen, because they're really tall and really big and really gold.
Right.
So
it helps distract people from the fact that there was someone based on the amount of money he initially got, whatever his $1 million loan from his father, whatever it is, if you keep that consistent with inflation, correct. Yeah. He actually has lost worth. Yeah.
Yeah. So had he just parked it in the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones or something like that, he would have more money. I know, and that never. Everybody remember? Do you remember the good old days when this was just something that a nightmare that we might wake up from? And we said, well, people will realize these things that you're saying about the bankruptcies and these things you're saying about the S&P 500 and the index fund and how he could be richer if he just did nothing. It just never. Nobody never. Just didn't matter at all, right?
They don't care.
So does it matter now?
No. I mean,
it makes us feel better.
Matter.
Well, that's what's worrisome. I mean, a lot, people, even smart, Republican, conservative, they're saying, oh, he won't make it a year or whatever, all this stuff. But it worries me. I don't know what more can be done on his part. I don't know how much more ignorance he can display, how much more offensive he can be.
I disagree. I think it's going to take the right small mistake. I think he's basically impervious to the big mistake. Because I don't think he'll do anything that constitutes
whatever the big mistake is, it's fake news. So
that's just our concept of bigness now. In terms of mistakes, has completely been warped since he's begun.
To me, it's
even before, honestly.
It's just one letter, in Russian saying pick Rex for Secretary of State. That is verifiable, right? It's
verifiable is the key there, because I have actually seen a bunch of stuff that I'll show you off air. Sorry to tease everyone, but a few big publications are attempting to vet it. But if it's right, basically what you said is what happened.
How could it not be?
Well, we'll see. We'll see if these bigger publications actually can vet this information in a way where they can come forward with it.
And so to me that
I have the whole story. It's funny.
That's a much better podcast than this one, Greg.
Well, as soon as I know it's vetted, but before they print, I'm definitely going to record.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's not. It's not surprising that it exists. If you just look at his policy towards Russia and you look at what seems to be fairly obvious American interests, they don't make sense. Right, it simply doesn't add up. Even if your goal is to create a stronger relationship moving forward, you would do so while trying to assert some level of dominance, given our financial and military strength versus theirs and whatever else. Right, the idea of being sort of obsequious
Well, yeah,
and
but
praising.
we don't need to compare financial strength. I mean, it's just military strength. If you actually look at
Sure,
Russia currently, their economy, their current economy is equal to Greece's current
Yeah, no, it's a
economy right
mess.
now. It's a mess. And sorry, Greece, but like literally, like that's currently what Russia's economy looks like. So this could also be seen as Russia, kind of starting to lash out. They've still got the military power. They've still got control of a lot of resources, but they're financially in a lot of trouble. Not only from the sanctions, but just in general, their economy is not in good shape. And if you've got all the weapons and you used to have all this land and all this other stuff, and you've lost all the money, I can see this being kind of, that acting out that someone like a Putin might do.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the only interpretation in terms of Putin in relation to this, right? This is he'd been trying for ages to find the most effective way to act out, right? To sort of give the symbolic sense of strength, in order to cover up the lack of it. The idea that a U.S. president would be willing to play along is the just absurd and shocking part. I mean, that's the part that your brain can't wrap around.
Well, before we go into Gregg's cybersecurity section of the podcast, we can talk, could be a good transition into that. Microsoft and Facebook going political has been another big story this week. The president and chief legal officer, Brad Smith of Microsoft, describes a need for a digital Geneva Convention. He basically said it will commit governments to protecting civilians from nation-state attacks in times of peace. He compares the tech industry's role, basically equates it to the Red Cross, which I don't know how, a lot of people took that. But what are our thoughts on that, on the need for a cyber Geneva Convention?
What would that mean exactly?
Well, so
do you know?
Yeah. So I've read the entire big long thing and then a few articles about it, and it's interesting because first and foremost, it is built on this idea that if we had a digital Geneva Convention, any of these governments would actually pay attention to it.
Right.
And in what is now called cyber everything, in the cyber world, they've shown that they don't really care about international norms and laws. China and Russia hacking pretty much anything they feel like, and America probably doing the same, just not getting as caught.
I would hope so. I would
many times.
assume so, right? I mean,
so with that said, it doesn't seem like they are paying attention to any of the existing laws. What tells you they would pay attention to a digital Geneva Convention?
what kind of
nothing
rights
to me.
would be
So they
signed into this?
They've written it in a way where they kind of break off. You shouldn't be able to hoard exploits and vulnerabilities for software, for operating systems, for hardware. When you find them, you will disclose them to the companies in order to help the population secure themselves. If you do any targeted specific exploit, creation, it has to be so targeted that it cannot affect a mass population. So even if it were to leak as source code, not much can come from it. They've written it in this way where they allow the governments a way to target with, cyber hacking, cybersecurity, and all these other fun things. But they're trying to convince them not to keep, say, a global exploit against Windows that would allow anyone to execute code in their back pocket, because that should be fixed to help the security of everyone.
By an individual or by a nation?
Well, what they want is nations to sign off on this, much like the initial Geneva Convention, protects civilians and certain military personnel during time of war. They want this one to protect civilians and, certain government people during times of peace.
So, but that would it put the onus? So, if an American citizen,
Peace being a relative term.
yeah, I understand. Yeah, of course. So, if an American citizen had this sort of exploitable thing, it would be the United States government responsibility to.
Well, so they're signing off as governments themselves. So it's
So
the
if the
governments, it's the
government
nation
had it-
states. So when
Okay.
the NSA comes up with a new exploit for a very large use software like say Firefox, which
Yeah.
is one of the things they've attacked a couple times because of its use as Tor browser and
Sure.
for various anonymizing technologies. They would be under this signed convention if it were to exist.
Mhm.
They would be forced to disclose that as fast as they learn about it. So the software can be updated and fixed in order to serve a larger percentage of the population with a positive instead of the small percentage they would like to with a negative.
Right. So it sounds lovely, but it sounds utterly unenforceable, right?
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Like, prove it. Prove that the government didn't come up with an exploit for Cisco's,
Oh, gosh.
iOS for their latest round of routers. Like, how do we know
It's
until they use it?
They're trying to prove a negative, right?
Exactly.
It's right. That is.
So while I agree that something like this should exist and should be enforced, I
Well-
also agree that it can't be enforced.
Well, the obvious parallel here is nuclear proliferation, right? I
Right.
mean, the secret, the just I know, Greg, the Israelis have nuclear weapons. Yeah, no.
Where'd they get those?
I don't know. I mean, it's sure there are ways in which you can gain some traction with these proliferation kind of treaties. If a country is disempowered enough that you can lean on them, then sure you can make them follow it. But if they're not, there's no means by which to do it, right? If you can get by producing nuclear weapons, right, you could certainly get by holding little patch of ones and zeros, right, or whatever it is that's gonna make this go. I don't know enough about technology, but just in a sort of an international relations principle, it's a very hard thing to maintain, and in this context, it seems almost impossible.
Mm-hmm. And the other cyber security politics news out of this week was Mark Zuckerberg came out calling for quote unquote supportive, safe, informed, civically engaged, inclusive communities, and talked about Facebook's role in that. Certainly I'm sure felt some responsibility to that after a lot of their perpetrating lots of fake news during the election cycle and things like that. But
So wait, Obama
basically
did
it
not
argues-
ban the Pledge of Allegiance? Is that what you're saying?
shocking.
Because I read that on
I know,
Facebook.
because
Yeah,
it's on
okay.
the internet, so it
Yeah.
has to be true.
Wow.
Well, I believe it should be edited, but that's because it's got a word in it that it bothers me when we think about separation of church and state.
Oh, I see. But,
But,
that's not the.
But I mean, so well,
And that
what's
was
the
added,
capacity?
like 100 years after we started using it too.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just referring to the
But yes,
fake news,
the fake news
proliferation of such
angle.
stories. Yes.
Well, what in my
Well, for
ignoramus
Zuckerberg, if
layperson
you read
impression on technology, how is Mark Zuckerberg, how's Facebook gonna?
So he says we've
strengthen
got
our
1 billion
communities?
people on our platform,
Sure, yeah.
and we've got access to do so many wonderful things. And in this write-up, it's more than 5,000 words. It's a gigantic write-up, and when you read it, it makes a lot of sense. Like if you aren't negative on them for 100 other reasons, you might read this and think these are some great ideas.
Sure.
And you look at what happened with Nepal and the big earthquake when they raised something like $15 million through Facebook's platform for relief, and when they organize the alerts to all of your friends that you're safe when a natural disaster or something else, a terrorist attack hits your hometown. They do a lot of things that are civically good,
Sure.
that are politically good. But at the same time, the whole piece reads as a pro-globalization
Of course.
thing. And-
Right. Here's a
and-
case in which online rights are equated with. With
So I
with
come
human
at it
rights.
from a really weird angle in that, a lot of the work that I've done online in the last decade, the things like with Anonymous, the things like with hacktivism and the Arab Spring and all these other actions taken, I got asked a lot of times, well, why are you working with these people in this other country? Why do you care if they're free or any of these other weird
Yeah.
questions? And I always answered very, from the heart that what do borders matter? Are you one of those townies who thinks that only the people who grew up on your block are people?
Right.
To me, those borders don't mean a thing. We're all on one rock here. And if anyone on this rock needs help, let's help. So for me, globalization it's got such a tainted kind of history as a term both politically and civically. And, and the left and the right have owned it at one time or another. You can think all the way back to Clinton and, his work with NAFTA and everything else, and really kind of kicking off a lot of our early globalization efforts where that term was starting to get thrown around.
Right, but that is a period which certainly hasn't ended, but in which globalization is really just a code word for economic globalization.
Of course.
Right, and that's one of the the running globalization always through the lens of economics is part of what you seem to be disconcerted about, right?
Right, because you look at Facebook, and what do the activist types really dislike about Facebook? It's the amount of tracking they do, the amount of data they keep, the amount of privacy they invade. And so do we really want them to be the arbiter of the simple fact that we now have a lot of people in power who are against globalization, who are for building walls, who are anti-immigration? And, do we want Facebook to be the one to step up and solve that problem for us? For me, I can see Facebook playing a role in that it has access to 1 billion people, so it can get messages out, it can provide some tools, but at the same time, I don't want them in any level of control or really leading this effort. They've proven to me to be a group of people that I don't necessarily trust on that point.
Well, I mean, you can speak in terms of civic-minded goals. You can speak in terms of how this technology has the potential to advance, a global public sphere or global understanding of human rights or whatever. But when you're doing that, you're bearing the lead, right? The real function of the institution is to make profit. Period. End of story. And that's actually a law, right? Like
Dodge Brothers versus Ford. I believe it was 1928, where they found in court, after making it all the way up to the top court in our country, that a company's actual goal is to make profits for the shareholders and not for the common good of man or its workers.
It's actually you can be removed. You're in violation of your position as CEO. It's a serious infraction.
As CEO,
Codified law.
As CEO, he takes a position that we need to do all of these civically minded things
insofar as they.
Exactly. What do they further internally for the company that makes the shareholders money?
Which, on the one hand, there's a slippery slope there to say that, okay, so does that mean that no for-profit enterprise can have a pro-social value? It doesn't mean that, but it does suggest pretty strongly that monopolistic institutions are going to have a real hard time. Right, because ultimately what you're asking them to do is to give up. If you're talking about creating a more democratic world, a world in which people are able to express themselves more freely, you're asking for them to give up something, right? To give up some level of control, and they're going to have to justify each one of those concessions to the bottom line. When you have multiple companies operating, it's slightly better, perhaps, because you get different motivations. Different people plugging in different roles, but here in the monopoly situation you've got, the very construction of the system is against the notion that the ultimate goal could be anything approaching this. So it's hard not to read it as window dressing, even if the intentions are maybe somehow deep down better than that.
Correct, because Facebook is a for-profit, corporation. There are public benefit corporations.
Public corporations.
There are public benefit corporations which could easily get away with doing this without the shareholders making a penny.
If Mark Zuckerberg bought back every share tomorrow, he could enact a plan like this reasonably. If you own the company, you can run into the ground if you want.
Multiple companies have switched later on in their lifetime to a public benefit corporation.
Right. It certainly can be done. You can run it as a private benefit institution if you have the control of it, right? So the idea.
But he's not doing that.
Oh, of course he's not doing that. Which means that this. Okay, so you should evaluate the specific things that he's going to do insofar as you believe they can help or not help. That said, this is just an advertisement. Yeah. You have to understand it as an advertisement. That doesn't mean it might not be an advertisement for something you like, right? I mean, there are things that are for sale that I like, and I'm glad they're for sale, right? There are things that are for sale that do good things in the world, but you're still being advertised to.
Ultimately, it seems we are very lukewarm on our takes on the ability for the tech industry to be making any sort of really domestic or international.
I mean, Facebook has definitely eroded a lot of trust in their ability to do these types of things without serious benefit for themselves. And that serious benefit seems to always come through harming our privacy,
That's where the money's at.
And I can't trust that that's not what this is about.
You know better than I ever would, but I mean, almost every internet company is a data collection company. Right? That's deep down what they are. I mean, Amazon, Facebook, these things, what they really, they sell you ads or they sell you, socks or whatever, but they also collect data. And so
That's how they know to keep selling you the right
or tell somebody else,
socks
right?
or
sell to somebody else this
They feed
information.
it all into giant databases. There's companies like Exact Data is one of the companies. You can go right to them and say, I need people who meet these exact demographics.
Right.
And they'll tell you where they got that demographic data from. It might be, from a feed that they got from Facebook, from anyone else, but it'll be 20 sources all brought together to build their database. And they'll say, oh, we've got 5 million of them. Would you like their home phone number, their email address, and their mailing address? Okay, we'll also send the mail to them.
Right.
And, so these places exist.
And it's plausible that doing
that's
something...
where the data goes.
Yeah, it's possible that doing something pro-social will allow them to collect more valuable data. But that's the only instance in which they're going to be doing something pro-social.
Correct.
Right, and so
that taints this message in a way where it makes it hard for me to believe anything he says in it.
well, what it means
I would like to believe some of it.
I believe he means it probably in some way, but what that really means is that any non-specific statement is meaningless. A specific statement, we're going to do X, that can be followed, like, empirically verifiable. Did they do X? Right? That could be a good thing, right? Absolutely. But the idea that these are our goals, that is a useless statement, 5 pages, 500 pages. It doesn't matter, right? Because ultimately it has to come down to the purpose of the institution, which is to make money. Maybe they can do that by doing stuff that makes the world a little bit better. But you better tell me what that stuff is, not your big theories about that stuff.
Step 1, step 2.
Yeah, right. It has to be. It has to be. And this is we like big ideas.
Love them.
Right. We like big ideas can be good, but when it comes to stuff like this, corporations, the big ideas are well decided. The big idea is make money for shareholders. That's the only big idea. Everything else is specifics. And so a statement of big ideas by somebody who is bounded by exactly as you say, right, like a literal court decision saying that the job is to make money, those big ideas are meaningless.
What you're saying is because, shareholders are the key, we need to convince Trump that we're the shareholders so he makes us all money?
Well, I mean, there is some. I mean, that's sort of like a dystopian metaphor, right? In which the only way we can do it, we'll just play his game. I mean, but Trump doesn't even care about shareholders, though. Right? Zuckerberg, at least, honestly, probably does care about his shareholders. He would rather them make money than him make a little more money and them go broke. I do believe that. Trump doesn't, at least historically, hasn't proven that at all. He's no interest in shareholders or welders or the guy who washes his suit or whatever.
What does he have interest in if it comes down to
I think just ego stroke. I mean, it seems so simplistic, right? I mean, do you just...
No, I'm there. I literally think it's just fame at this point is what he cares about now.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to read it kind of just psychoanalytically, right? That this is just an immortality project of a very vain person. Right, who's just just dealing. He has to deal with the human condition has forced him into this area in which he has to act in a certain way in order to deny that condition, and he's just been fortunate enough to be able to do it in this public fashion. I don't know. It's too depressing.
Well, yeah, now that we've circled a few times in and out of the news and lasting stories and debates, why don't you take it into the cybersecurity segment?
All right, everyone out there. So I wanted to bring up a few pieces of software that I think everyone should be paying a little attention to if you care about your privacy, your anonymity, or just your security online. Each of these, interestingly enough, at one time have had shout-outs from Mr. Edward Snowden. So the first one is Tails. Tails is an interesting piece of software that you download and install on a USB stick. It is an operating system that you then boot into. You can get it at tails.baum.org. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's BOUM.org. And what Tails does for you is it boots up into an environment where your browser and your traffic are all going through Tor. It allows you to visit the Onion sites. It allows you to be as anonymous as it is built to allow. And it is said to be the tool that Edward Snowden was actually using when he was communicating originally with reporters and getting data transferred around. And so that's Tails. And it's, for an introduction into this type of software, I think it's the easiest to get started with, to start playing with. And in general, it's a huge step up from just running Windows or just running Mac OS or even running your own, install of Ubuntu Linux or anything else. The next step up on this is, of course, the one that I actually recommend people use right now. And this is a piece of software called Qubes, spelled Qubes. Qubes is interesting in that it basically sandboxes everything. And what that means is everything runs in its own processes and in its own little area of memory where it can't interact with anything else. So if you open a PDF file and it's got some malicious code in it from a nation state trying to get at your system, it's going to be stuck in that little box and not able to get anywhere else. It's not going to read your contacts from whatever system you might have them stored in. It's not going to read your email messages. It's not going to include a piece of software that next time you boot, it loads up and has access to everything, because it's in this little virtual machine that is just sandboxed away from the operating system. And this does a really good thing for you. It means, as a journalist, as an activist, as anyone out there really, doing something where you need to guard yourself. And at this point, we've seen through notices from Yahoo, from Google, from everyone else who are giving the nation state is attacking you notices to its users, that they are indeed attacking journalists. They are going after their computers. They are trying to get this information. So running Qubes is going to solve that problem for you. It's not going to solve it 100%, but it's going to get you 90% of the way to the finish line. At that point, you'll want to use the encryption tools built in. You'll want to encrypt your email with PGP, which is built into the email client in Qubes. You'll want to, do all of those fun things. But looking into Qubes is what I recommend for a current operating system. If you actually want to secure your system beyond Qubes, if you want to go to that next level, there is a piece of software in alpha right now that is definitely a step above everything out there, and it is called Subgraph. And Subgraph, Subgraphos, which can be found, I believe, at subgraph.org, is currently, again, it's alpha software. But it segregates everything into these little pieces that are even stronger sandboxes, that it puts a proxy layer below these sandboxes that forces your traffic through Tor. It really does everything you can imagine to try and protect your safety, to keep any exploits that have been sent to you from getting out to any other software. It does everything you can imagine to keep you safe and secure while online and anonymous. And I only recommend Qubes above Subgraph at this point because Qubes is up on version 3.2. It's what currently most people, like Edward Snowden, are actually running when they need a secure operating system. And Subgraph is still, very admittedly on their website in alpha, begging for more people to help them find bugs. But again, if you are looking to keep yourself safe, secure, and anonymous online, check out Tails, check out Qubes, check out Subgraph. These are the tools that people like me use.
So, why do I need this? All right, what problem is this going to solve for me if I go with Qubes?
So, private communications.
Okay.
Let's say you do have private communications that you would like to never be exposed.
Okay.
Then this is the area you go to. This is definitely, in my mind, more targeted at people who are generally doing things like activism, like, resistance movements, journalists especially dealing with leakers. That kind of a crowd really needs these types of tools. However, even as a member of the general public, don't come at me with the "I have nothing to hide" statement, because
no, certainly not.
Everyone has something to hide. And in general, it's just how much do you want the world knowing about you? Using Windows and loading up Chrome and hitting Facebook. Well, they know everything you're doing. They're logging everything you're doing. Your computer is logging everything you're doing. And when it comes time for someone to inspect your computer for a digital trail, a history, a past that they might want to know about, they're going to find it. They're going to find it easily. They're going to do it with little effort. Using tools like this are going to get you into secure environments where you can feel pretty safely that this data is getting destroyed when you're rebooting, nothing's getting saved or logged, that you're going out over the Tor network. And in general, it's not perfect. Nothing is, but it's going to move that dial, 90% more secure and safe and anonymous than you were before you were using them.
That was, what was the spelling on Tails? Tail?
Tails. Tails.
Tails and cubes. Those are our cybersecurity recommendations for the week.
And of course, play around with Subgraph if you feel like, helping them with bug reports.
What's the cost of this?
Of course, all of these tools are free.
Okay, just verifying.
And open source, so you can verify strictly.
So quickly, can you talk me through the economics of these if they're free and open source?
The need is strong enough at this point for tools like this that people have decided it's worth their time and money to put the effort in, with basically making no profits off of it. I will say, interestingly enough, that all of these come on the back of a piece of software named Tor,
Sure.
which was originally developed by the U.S. government before open sourcing it and giving it out to the world. The other tools right now, one of them, and I'm sorry, but I'm blanking on it, maybe our engineering can help, is actually receiving funding from the U.S. government right now to keep them afloat and do the work. Cubes or Subgraph, I don't remember which one.
Does that make you
but
nervous?
They admit it right on their front page, and right on their About Us pages, they talk about where the funding's coming from, and that funding is interesting. It's from a technology grant that the government gives to try and foster some of this open source stuff that they feel we need. What level of say that gives them, I highly doubt any. Much like Tor, I don't think the government, got in and, through their, donations of money, got anything out of it. Because knowing the people involved, they are very anti-government people usually writing this software.
It's a funny marriage. Yeah.
They wouldn't take the money if it also forced them to do the things that they don't want to do.
Right. I guess the conspiratorial mind thinks that somehow the government has a way to outflank these people, although that seems unlikely to me.
Well, with Tor specifically, the government didn't get any of what they wanted out of Tor developers themselves, so they went to CMU and hired a team of people over there to break through and find some holes and some ways around the Tor network that maybe some of us aren't happy about. But it didn't come from Tor; it came from CMU.
Right. Wow.
Well, so also in the spirit of protecting our data, this week's Know Your Rights segment, which typically we'll do, regarding any variety of situations in which it would help you to know your rights. Our theme this week is protecting your data in U.S. border crossings. Essentially, the Fourth Amendment more or less does not apply to you if you are crossing in border into the U.S., if you're coming into an international airport, where normally you would need a warrant or some reasonable expectation that the person has committed a crime or done anything wrong. In these cases, the ICE, the CBP essentially have the right to treat you, as though with the suspicion that you've committed any awful crime and can search more or less anything. So we have a few tips for if you are in a situation where you're crossing international borders into the U.S. Since this is the case at the moment, there is some literature on like ACLU and people like that are, trying to
EFF.
Correct. Trying to do work to deem this unconstitutional. At the moment, that is the case. And so basically there's some suggestions that at websites, EFF was particularly helpful, but ACLU, National Lawyers Guild, have a lot of literature on this. More or less, the recommendation is to be carrying as little data as possible over the border, to encrypt it, to keep a backup of your data elsewhere, and to be able to, re-download it once you get to your destination is the best course of action at the moment. If you want to talk a little bit about encryption, about, whatever you think might be best in terms of ways to do that, mannerisms of encryption that you think are more reliable.
I mean, I do obvious things if I'm leaving the country. I encrypt my drive if I need to take one with me. Usually I try not to. I try and do whatever I can to just use a device on the other end of my trip so I don't have to take anything that is exploitable in the middle there. But if I have to go, I will encrypt all of my stuff. I will ship it ahead of time. I will have a friend ship it under a different name from a different address, so it doesn't track to me in any way. And I will pick it up on the other end. And by that, I mean my friend on the other end will pick it up under his name and bring it to me. So I don't cross borders with tech that I don't want them to inspect. If I have to cross borders with that technology, then I go through tools like VeraCrypt, which is a wonderful tool. It's a fork off of the old TrueCrypt code with a bunch of fixes, some security reviews proving that it's a pretty good piece of software. And I would recommend looking into it. If you're on a Mac, there's FileVault. If you're on Linux, again, you have access to VeraCrypt. You also have access to just the built-in, Luke's, DMCrypt, all those tools. And really, I mean, the one thing you have to remember is after reading all of this information from the ACLU, from the court cases, from the EFF, we don't actually know what the rules state, and either do they. Specifically, if you read what the ACLU has to say, we're not sure if they can hold your device for 5 days or indefinitely. No one seems to actually know that answer in any legal sense. And so the average seems to be about 5 days while they try and break into it. We do not know an exact amount of days or hours they're allowed to hold you at the border before letting you through or not in this specific instance where you don't want to give them access to your electronics. There are about 20 varying ideas about how those laws are written and which laws apply and which organizations have a say here and what recourse you might have legally. So what we're hoping is that through actions the ACLU and the EFF are taking, we'll get much better answers to those. Whether we like the answers or not, it would just be nice to have said answers so we know how to act at the border.
There was even a, I don't know how recently, I want to say it was this week, but I could be wrong about that. There was a a US-born NASA scientist who was detained at the border until he unlocked his phone. So this law, or lack thereof, I suppose, allows Customs and Border Patrol to be able to search your devices. However, it does not force you to give any passwords, give a PIN, or for instance, to your iPhone. It doesn't mandate that you do that. However, this man was, I'm going to butcher his name if I try and pronounce it, Sid Bekanevar. He, like I said, he's a U.S.-born citizen. He's a NASA scientist. And he was detained at the border until he provided them with the information to be able to unlock his phone. And the way that they phrase it, it sounds, like they have, there were some anecdotal reports of these subjects are shown, papers that say that the CBP has legal authority to search phones, and that sort of gives them the implication that they're then obligated to, kind of comply in them searching for this data, even though that's not the case. And so this was a very
so we end up in a situation where they are legally allowed to search your information on your electronic devices, but you are not compelled to give them passwords to get into it.
Correct.
Is how it works. The more interesting part of Sid's story here is that in some of the readings and some of the articles, you find that the scary point was working for NASA, working for the US government, what classified information might be on that device that the person requesting, and requesting is, lightly saying it, his password, would then get to see that he shouldn't. And how actionable is this NASA scientist at that point because he revealed classified information by doing so? It raises a lot of other really odd questions to do with their ability to search at that border. If he is a U.S. citizen, if he is working at a certain level of clearance in government, facilities.
Yeah, it says he was enrolled in the Global Entry Program, which basically, if you've undergone background checks, should allow you very expedited entry into the country.
So then, no matter what the law says, do they have the right to force him to give up his password if that exposes classified information far above their security clearance?
Mm-hmm.
It gets crazy. It gets really crazy with this one. So I'm hoping we get some actual answers, and the right lawyers are currently looking into this to get something written down. So as soon as we have it, I think everyone will know.
Yeah, which I'm sure is especially difficult when, like in this situation, he has no idea what could have been, what was or was not seen on the phone. I mean, they take it and kind of leave you there without it. He has no idea what was copied off of it, what was found in searching it. So, in this, it was actually also a phone issued by NASA. So a lot of increased concerns about the possibility for these people to, like you said, be gaining access to information far above their security clearance.
What were the grounds for why was there anything explained as to why this happened?
The literature I found on it is very vague. It sounds like they had him detained and basically told him that he wasn't going to be able to leave until he provided his phone password.
Wow.
I don't know how much. I think he tried to talk to them and they were not budging on, which is interesting because, like we said, most of the ACLU, EFF, National Lawyers Guild literature on protecting your data, other than the ability to encrypt it or to put it on a third-party server in the meantime, is your right to not have to give up these passwords. So this, brings a lot of that into question. A set of laws that's already very, not doing a great job protecting people's privacy.
There we have it. That is know your rights. And all we learned there is that we really don't actually know
No.
those rights.
We don't know our rights. Okay.
So the one thing we do know is you don't have to give up your password.
Unless this guy had to give up his password.
Yep,
He didn't
well-
have to. They just told him he had to, and he believed it.
Right. Okay.
But
Yes.
you don't.
You don't.
Especially if you have a NASA-issued phone. Just remember this. You don't have to do
It's just too
it.
crazy to even. All
Don't
right.
listen to them.
Right.
Yeah. So at the moment, we know we have almost no rights. So like we said, protect your data, encrypt it.
Particularly at border crossings, you're
Exactly.
saying. Yeah, no, that's a, for those of us who do not cross borders that frequently, right, might not be attuned to that, but that's remarkable the way in which your rights disappear in that in between space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like the Fourth Amendment doesn't exist.
In certain circumstances, when crossing the borders for this country, it doesn't. And that is disgusting.
Yeah. Oh, for
So while much smarter people do their work to try to change that for us at the moment, like we said, do not travel with data to the extent possible when you are crossing into the United States.
All right. I think that covers know your rights. We are running unbelievably long here.
That's all right
we
for
are
a first show.
having fun on our first show. I hope you guys are too. So we are going to go into a new section, as every section is, called Hacktivist Spotlight, where I want to talk about a hacktivist, and this time an actual friend of mine, who is in need of some assistance, some support out there, and generally everyone understanding his current plight. This activist is Lori Love, a citizen of the United Kingdom, living over there and currently accused of hacking into just about every U.S. organization that the U.S. Government doesn't want hacked, from NASA to the FBI. None of that proven in court yet, but those are the accusations. And Lori and his team from Courage Foundation, which is an amazing group, have been fighting to keep him from getting extradited. And currently, the U.S. government really wants him to come over here and go before a judge and possibly a jury to figure out just how much they want to punish him. And they've been fighting for extradition for a while now. It has gone in front of multiple judges, multiple people in high places in government over there. And right now, they have agreed to the extradition. This is problematic for many reasons. One, given the fact that this is a nonviolent crime that did not lead to any lasting damage to any systems. It led to maybe a few employees having to stay late one night to patch a hole in a system that aren't they lucky he exposed, and it wasn't, some Russian or Chinese hacker.
Right.
And Lori having the issue that the news loves to talk about of having Asperger's, having depression, and generally thinking that the day of extradition might be a good time to call life quits. So with all that said, we all really don't want Lori extradited. One, because half of the things he's being charged with aren't even crimes in the country he lives in. Two, because it will be very bad for his physical and mental health, and this has been proven in court. And the courts there have said, Well, yeah, but the U.S. prison system has, prisons with hospitals and psychologists and other ways to help you deal with it. They'll take his shoelaces away, so he'll be fine.
Right.
What we've ended up in is this weird situation where a bunch of sitting MPs sitting there in London have actually put out letters of support for Laurie that he should not be extradited. And it still looks like it's going to be going through right now.
What is his current status in the UK?
Current status is the extradition is under appeal.
So, but where is he right now? Is
Free.
He's free. Okay.
And that leads right into where he actually is right now, which is having a lot of fun. I would think anyways. He has been spending some amounts of time with the autonomous nation of anarchist libertarians, I believe is the correct way to say that. And, a lot of news is fighting the urge to put down the actual letters there.
The acronym. Yes.
The acronym of ANAL. But this group of people have been liberating buildings in London. These are buildings so far that are owned by foreign entities, foreign, people who seem to be using them like everyone else who owns property in London as a tax haven, as a way to hide their money by owning valuable property there in ways where we learned through the Panama Papers, they hide their names, their ownership through shell corporations offshore to the point where we have no idea who these people are that own these buildings.
It's amazing, isn't it? You would think that you would store your money in like gold bars, like hidden somewhere, but instead it's the biggest thing in the world.
Right. So here these buildings sit unoccupied
right? Yeah.
for years sometimes. And they're great property. They're multi-story, huge buildings, some commercial, some residential, mansions with, 30, 40 rooms right there in London. And so what this group is doing is they are getting inside of these buildings and squatting. And they are not leaving no matter what the government says or how they try and remove them. And the government isn't entering the properties themselves to remove them because they don't really know who owns them, so they can't ask.
Yeah.
So the best the government has done so far is to get an order of eviction from the land. But that order of eviction was not for the building. And so they still couldn't go into the building to remove these people from the building. And what the government's running into is the people who own these buildings not wanting to come forward to stake their claim to file to have these people evicted. So they are taking over more buildings. And just as of a couple weeks ago, they took over another building in the center of London because it seems they're getting away with it.
So as long as they don't get caught going in, once they're in, there's nobody to call the cops, essentially.
Pretty much, although the cops seem to be guarding the doors and giving them trouble.
And but once they're there.
Once they're there, they seem to have pretty good control over these buildings. And they're turning them into homeless shelters. They're turning them into workspaces for resistance movements, for politically, usually far left movements to brainstorm, work out, and workshop. But I think the biggest thing they're doing is honestly bringing homeless people off the streets into these fully heated, with electricity, giant buildings in the center of town that aren't being used.
That's the biggest thing has two sides to it, just that you said, right? One, they're helping people who seem to be in need of help. But two, they're drawing attention to the fact that the way in which resources are divvied up in this world, there are so much for some that they can have entire buildings that they leave entirely empty, right? The fact that the thing that strikes me in hearing the story and that I think is probably most politically effective, I mean, we know there are homeless people. What we might not know is that there are, billions and trillions of dollars, I don't know how many, incredible value in property being held utterly empty, right? Just for the purpose of maintaining value, right? And
one of the buildings they went into is estimated to be worth about 100 million British pounds.
Wow.
So that's quite a lot of money. The one that they just took was 15 million.
Well, it's a nice reminder, the idea that capitalism spurs, inevitably spurs growth and pushes the world forward. Well, not if you take $100 million and park it in an empty building, right? No jobs are being created with that. No innovation is being encouraged. Nothing, right? It's just sitting there so that other people can't have it.
Yeah, it's just taking up space and actually causing what I would consider harm to the community it's in.
Yeah, and that's so it's a remarkable thing. I mean, right. It's always hard to. I guess you have less trouble with this, saying you have no problem with the ends here do seem to be justifying the means. I get a little bit uncomfortable saying break into people's property, right?
Right.
There's something about that in
It
this.
seems like you don't have to tell them; it's happening already.
Right, and I guess once it happens,
They're about 3 years
right?
into this
Yeah,
form of
yeah.
action. They are doing quite good with it, but
and this is where Lori is now to tie it back to the.
Lori
to the
is
hacker
definitely
hacktivist.
doing some work with them. There's been some great news coverage of that lately. Lori does actually have a place to live, so he's not going
He's
through
not
these
there,
these places like that. But he's been offering assistance, helping, being there for the actions, and generally trying to do good in this world and getting seriously politically active. And this is the type of kid that maybe he did get really good at hacking at some point, and I'm gonna say he actually is really good at it. But at the same time, kids in those situations might make mistakes, might use this, before they've really gotten to a point where they understand what they're doing. And I don't know that was done here. All of these are alleged crimes, and I think if any of these crimes actually were done. I don't think they were done unwittingly. I think this time he actually did, do something on purpose if he did these. But what I will say is that I don't believe this is the type of crime that deserves extradition.
Right.
No damages were done at a level that required this amount of effort. Years of work by the U.S. government. Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent, I'm sure, if not millions, just trying to get this person over there to save face.
Well, that's the issue, right? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that if he committed the crimes, these are crimes, right? Sure. To me, the parallel, and sort of to me, it seems common sense, but who knows? Would be that if somebody had, for example, broken into their high school and on the weekend and played basketball there, and broken into a corporation and used the copy machine twice but didn't leave any damage, just and then they went to London, that person would not be extradited back into the United States, right?
Right.
And and I'm taking
about the level
I'm taking
of
your
damage
word
done.
for it, right? So that if you want to point to why it seems absurd, parallel crimes not done online would not incur. No, but it wouldn't be worth the money, right? You wouldn't do it. So here the question is. Are they doing it in order, as you say, to save face because it's embarrassing because their security was ill-formed? Are they doing it to prove a point? I mean, what's remarkable about it is the idea that somehow it's so much worse in the cyber world than it is in the real world that you would extradite somebody for crimes like this.
They're scared of hackers. They're so scared of hackers that they want to set examples that even touching our networks, we're going to come after you this strongly. I mean, you can look back at Aaron Swartz. You can look back at even Barrett Brown. You can look back at all these people where, cyber played a big part of their cases, and over prosecution is the norm in this space.
So there's no consequentialist perspective here. They're not really worried about what actually happened as a result of that crime.
They just want to scare other hackers.
They're looking down the road to
stop people from doing it. And you know what? This doesn't work. This type of action doesn't scare other people. It just infuriates more people into taking more action.
I mean, also yeah, right. I guess that's what you're saying. I'm just going to agree. When you treat people inhumanely, then a certain group of people will say, okay, I'm not going to do that thing. I don't want to be treated inhumanely. Another group of people are going to say, I'm going to do that thing to try to stop you from treating other people inhumanely. Right. So the calculus that's taking place here is a suspicious one. Given the facts as you understand them.
Yeah. And, if you actually want to read up more about this case and this person, you can go to freelori.com, I believe. And it is FREELAURI. So go over there, take a look. There's a lot of asks on that website, sending letters in to the right people to convince them to stop this extradition. If you're actually in England over there, sending letters to your MPs, convincing them to speak out publicly about this. There's asks. And if you want to support the people who are actually working on these campaigns and trying to save people like him and people like Snowden and all these others, including Chelsea Manning. Courage Foundation runs that website, and they need all the support they can get.
Awesome.
There we go. There we have it. Our first show recorded. I'm sure we will get a little more streamlined and get the segments better in order for next time. But I think as a first show, that went pretty well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on,
That's
Greg.
exciting.
Yes, and thank our guest for being here the entire time. We were going to have a guest segment at the end, but I realized that doesn't seem to work right. We definitely need the interaction.
I think so. I think, I don't know if this would be anything we'd use moving forward. I think you might want to introduce the guest a little bit more than we did. Because then people know you, and Casey's part of the show. That's what she is. But why should they listen to me?
Yeah, definitely.
So we could do that now. You could record an intro for me if you wanted. That was the note that I just... It can be really quick. Like, I don't need a lot of... Just so they have some idea.
No, we're going to blow you up.
Yeah,
like, we're going to...
Right. Just need some idea of why they
cut
should...
a few seconds ago.
Should listen. Yeah.
Cut this and then start the recording again, so there'll be a shorter one with us, and then we can cut it up. And what is your actual title there? Professor of fun stuff?
My official title right now, hopefully changing in the next 2 weeks, is it's a long one. It's Assistant Professor of Communication and International Studies.
Changing in a couple weeks.
It will either become associate or
Assistant
I'll be getting a
Professor
new job.
of...
Oh, wow.
Of Communication and International Studies at Boston College.
Not mid-semester, I hope.
Well, no, I would finish the semester one.
Okay.
But yes, so assistant for the time being. Yeah, people outside, that doesn't mean you assist the professors.
What's the name of the class that I normally go to?
Yours is called Online Communication and Global Society. You are the consistently most remarked upon session of the course in the evaluations.
Online Communication and...
Global Society.
I write it, then it sticks.
Yeah.
So are you recording?